Hey Skywatchers, this week we talk again with Scott Stevens about his upcoming documentary at the end of this year.
You've got a documentary coming up on weather modification, weather control, and I think it's going to be a real stunning documentary that's going to blow minds.
Well, let's just say that it's going to give me a nice little visual medium to kind of wrap together everything that all the information that I've come across in this, 5-year discovery of weather modification. And you can do lots and lots of radio interviews, but once you sit people down and begin to show them visually what's going on, it becomes very, very compelling. And that excites me.
Scott, can you tell us some of the things that you've discovered, like maybe new information about weather control, weather modification technology, and maybe for new Skywatchers that are tuning in, maybe give them an overview of what this documentary will examine?
Well, what I need to do is put 2008 and essentially this decade where we've seen the extreme weather events, we kind of have to put that in context as to what they're capable of doing weather modification-wise. We tend to think, and at first thought, you're like, oh my goodness, this is geoengineering on a planetary scale. It's simply a task that is too great for us to even consider. And I find it interesting that Discovery Channel now is running an 8-piece long series on exactly that. How do we geoengineer our way out of this ecological disaster and mess that we're finding ourselves in? We go back to the 50s and look at storm fury, seeding clouds or seeding hurricanes to see if we can't get them to weaken a little bit before landfall. We can find that there have been experiments conducted for the better part of 50 years. Their anticipated results back in the 50s were not what they were thinking. The problem with weather control is, how do you have a control case? How do you do double blind, this works, this doesn't work? And that's really tough to do, because you've got a situation and either you manipulate it or you leave it alone. And the problem is you can't manipulate one and leave the next one alone. You just kind of just do it and see what happens. Instead of telling people along the Gulf Coast that, yeah, we're going to try to weaken the hurricane because they had such disastrous results 60 years ago, now they're just doing it. And just, if it goes badly, then it goes badly and nobody's the wiser. We just simply clean up afterwards. Well, we know that weather modification since the 50s has been done in secret. It's tough enough to get a road built through a wilderness region as far as the EPA and environmental impact statements. And goodness knows how difficult it would be and the hoops to jump through if we wanted to engineer the atmosphere on a big scale. So you just do it quietly. Over these years, we've come up with Colonel Bearden's and the quantum potential, or the scalar weapons. Russians were working aggressively on those in the 50s and 60s and apparently began using them in 1963. So we've had that going on for 45 years, that we've had the Russians using what their program was termed energetics. They'd use it to shoot down planes, shoot down space shuttles, shoot down submarines. You just, boom, evacuate the energy out of a region, and the engines flame out, and down it goes, and the electronics are fried, and you're hurtling along at 500 miles an hour, and you have no control. It's just like, oops, sorry guys, this is a war. Weather, you essentially target the beams on a much wider area, turn the intensity way down, and slowly tweak the atmosphere to your liking. And the cool thing with these quantum potential weapons is that these Whittaker beams are bidirectional, meaning unlike lasers or guns and artillery that we use now, which are you add energy at the target, be it kinetic energy with a shell, or laser heat energy with intensified or focused light beams, focused radiation. These weapons can pull energy from a target zone. And when you draw energy out of the atmosphere, you create instability. And that instability is a very handy thing if you want to create precipitation. Rain or snow, it doesn't really matter. A cloud top, let's just take a garden variety thunderstorm. The cloud tops will be about 50 below Celsius at 35,000, 45,000 feet, which is pretty darn chilly. But if you can suck another 20 degrees Celsius and drop those cloud tops to 70, 80 below zero, what you do is you create a violent updraft. And if you continually rotate and move your targeted zone, you can pick five little areas in the shape of a large square, a large pentagram, and generate thunderstorms. And as long as you've got them in a circular shape, the Earth's Coriolis spin is going to introduce rotation to it. And then you begin to get your low-level swirl. And as long as you keep those hot towers, those thunderstorms going, you're going to continue to draw the inflow. You're going to continue with the swirl. You've essentially begun the development of a tropical storm. And it's no more difficult than to trigger thunderstorms, at a random basis, say ahead of a cold front or across the southeast during a summertime afternoon. It's just not that difficult to do.
Scott, let me ask you, I know you go up against people who would say, wait a minute, this naturally happens.
Sure it does.
So why would anyone try to, manipulate it on this level? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, we're curious about these direct beam energy mechanisms that now where are they? What do they look like? What are they mounted on? Are they planes? Who uses them? That's the only missing part here.
It is one of the missing parts. Tesla was able to build. Our understanding from Colonel Bearden is that you need two of them to cross the beam. You've got to create essentially two speakers, and then where those sound waves, where those longitudinal waves cross, is where your interference zone is. And those waves amplify or cancel each other out. But the cool thing is that these waves are pulsing through time. And so we have a very rapid oscillation in and out of a time domain. And so you have these, what are called dipoles, these spinning potentials. And they oscillate in and out of the time domain. They go into the time domain, the fourth axis spins up, they come back into this domain, and they decay. The energy radiates out. They go back into the fourth dimension, they go back into time, soak it back up, come back into free space, radiate, and they're just constantly oscillating back and forth. And the inverse is true. You can deposit heat in the fourth domain, or you can extract heat from the fourth domain, bring it back and forth across that veil. What they look like, well, Tesla was able to do this with one beam. Right now, our understanding is that it still takes two. Well, at least as of 20 years ago, we hadn't had somebody say we could do it with one beam. I would guess that we can. And anything from the size of small Volkswagen, and then the bigger the beam, the bigger. I mean, you can scale them up. So it would be easy enough to put them on board aircraft and fly them.
Oh, that's interesting. That's what I was curious about. Have you seen them or talked with people who know what these are? The
only pictures I have seen were in Air and Space Technology in 1980, and then there are artist renditions of those tools. And at that point in time, the beasts were about an acre in size. So they are much, much larger devices than as computing power and manufacturing processes have gotten far more refined in that 30 years. Easy enough to drop it on board an aircraft. The amazing thing is, with these Q-potential weapons, is that you hit the fire button and it's done instantly. There's no travel speed of sound, no travel speed of light. I mean, it's quantum. So the result appears instantaneously at the target zone. And so you can literally point them through the planet to appear on the other side. And if you've got chemtrails laced out, that's your target zone, and the thing manifests inside of the bounded region by the trails.
That's amazing. I recently videotaped an X being laid out, and then in the middle of this X, 3 to 4 planes selectively sprayed an aerosol in the center of this X. And then there was an even smaller plane that just went through it, didn't spray anything.
That could have been the plane with the weapons on board, the one without the trails. What I'm seeing more and more frequently are what I term a shadow plane. You've got the plane with the trail, then there's another plane traveling at a different altitude and staggered ahead or behind it and not leaving a trail. So it's almost as if the planes together are creating that interference zone, then the weapon is oscillated on and off as needed. And so you can take the plane, directly measure the environment you're trying to alter, and then hit the button. The atmosphere warms a little bit. The next sortie of planes flies on through. If they're happy with it, they'll leave it alone. If not, they apply another solution.